What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. It's titled Tuesday as Dynamite airs on a different night and AEW goes up against NXT. Join us now as we look at this week's edition of Dynamite, as well as the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including Hangman Adam Page gets a serious concussion, AEW fires Ace Steel, Bret Hart wants Goldberg removed from the WWE Hall of Fame, Austin Theory's unlikely cash-in, Jim Ross retiring, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our non-wrestling channel, Incredible. Now, as always, we won't recap the matches, but just look at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. As always, we start off with the good as number 1, Title Tuesday. AEW has plenty of titles and they can put them to effective use as they competed against NXT on a rare Tuesday night matchup. While last night's show was nowhere near pay-per-view quality, all 4 title defenses were entertaining, particularly the Trios Championship, and a smart strategy for keeping viewers tuned. Number 2, this is a dangerous game. Now, as unfortunate as Hangman Adam Page's in-ring injury was, Jon Moxley thought fast on his feet when he was cutting a promo pointing out the dangers wrestlers face every time they step into the ring. Moxley wished Page well, but reminded fans that wrestlers play a dangerous game, a perfect transition into Moxley calling out MJF. MJF's promo where he said he wasn't cashing in his title opportunity until Moxley is 110% was interesting to say the least. Not only did it set up the main event for Full Gear, but it gave Moxley a chance to end the show with a promo promising to knock MJF's teeth out, choke him, and other punishments we probably can't mention on YouTube. Number 3, MJF face turn? Is MJF turning face, or is he swerving Jon Moxley and the Blackpool Combat Club? Anyone familiar with MJF can't be buying Max's sudden decision to win the AEW World Championship fair and square, and especially in light of his previous swerve on CM Punk. Still, fans have to be entertained as they wait for Max to pull the rug out from under Moxley and Regal. Number 4, Rio returns. A former AEW World Champion Rio's surprise return was just what Dynamite needed. Rio is one of AEW's best workers, and she's not only popped the crowd, but she's also provided a more formidable ally for AEW Interim Women's Champion Toni Storm, who has her hands full with Dr. Britt Baker and her partners in crime. Number 5, a usual good mix of interviews and backstage segments. Although 4 entertaining title matches anchored Dynamite, AEW didn't rest on its laurels and furthered the various storylines on the undercard, including FTR's quest to regain the AEW World Tag Team Championship, Jade Cargill's efforts to get her TBS Championship back from title thief Nyla Rose, and other storylines likely to lead to matches at Full Gear. And Renee Paquette hasn't lost a beat. Renee Paquette, as expected, is a welcomed addition to AEW as she adds a lot to the interviews and provided longtime fans with a familiar face. She's been out of the grappling game since 2020, but she clearly hasn't lost a step. But that was a good what about the bad is number 1, Regal's promo. And fans got to see a classic clash between villains from 2 generations as Lord Regal confronted MJF. MJF called Regal out for not getting him a job in the WWE during Max's early years in wrestling, only for Regal to point out he still needed work to be ready. Unfortunately, a promo that started off well and showed plenty of promise went off the tracks, as Regal, a known black-hearted villain in the wrestling world, suddenly lambasted MJF for cutting corners, telling the salt of the earth that the only way he could be a devil is if he stops taking shortcuts. All logic went out the window at this point, as Regal seemed to pride himself as a family-friendly villain. Regal even said he'd employed his brass knuckles in the past because he liked the way they felt, not that he needed it. Number 2, too many turns. AEW went to the well too often last night with teasing turns, first with Pac arguing with his Death Triangle teammate Rey Fenix after Fenix stopped Pac from using a hammer during the Death Triangle's Trios title defense against Best Friends. Later, Wheeler Yuta seemed to be at odds with Bryan Danielson about Daniel Garcia stabbing Danielson in the back, telling Bryan he should have known better. And we have no problem with breakup angles, but last night's twin turns were too much for one night. Number 3, Jericho piledrives Jerry Lynn. Chris Jericho continued his campaign to destroy Ring of Honor's legacy by going after a Ring of Honor announcer. This led to former Ring of Honor World Champion Jerry Lynn stopping Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society, but Lynn paid the price. Unfortunately, what followed was the real disgrace to Ring of Honor's legacy as Jericho hit a tombstone piledriver on Lynn onto the Ring of Honor belt that looked as worked as a time Kane tombstone Linda McMahon. If Jericho was concerned about hurting Lynn, who has a history of neck problems, why not perform another move? Now, there was nothing downright ugly as AEW presented a strong show to compete against NXT on their first head-to-head competition in some time. But what do you guys think of Dynamite last night? Let us know in the comments down below. Now let's move on to the news. Now, first story looks at Hangman Adam Page's scary injury at Dynamite. At top of today's news is a story concerning former AEW World Champion Hangman Adam Page. Page was injured at Dynamite during his AEW World Heavyweight Championship match against Jon Moxley. As fans tuning into the Title Tuesday edition of Dynamite saw Page collapse after he took a lariat from Jon Moxley. The match was stopped due to Hangman Adam Page's injury and he was stretchered out of the ring before being taken to a nearby hospital. AEW then issued the following statement. Hangman Adam Page was taken tonight by medical personnel to a Cincinnati trauma center and diagnosed with a concussion. He was discharged but will remain in AEW's concussion protocol. AEW and Hangman Adam Page are grateful for the exemplary response and care of staff and local medical personnel and are appreciative of the love and support of fans everywhere. Now that was a scary injury, and it's a reminder that risks are involved in any part of wrestling. You don't have to jump off a 20-foot ladder to get injured. And if you don't think that concussions are scary enough, concussions did end the career of Bret the Hitman Hart. Now we send our well wishes to Hangman Adam Page for a fast and full recovery. Next up, AEW releases Ace Steel. Big news in AEW as it's released Ace Steel, Steel who is reportedly involved in the backstage bedlam allegedly involving CM Punk, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, had been working in AEW as a producer. Dave Meltzer commented on the Wrestling Observer Radio that, so he was officially released yesterday, so I guess that is the first bit of news out of that whole situation in weeks. There's a lot of other stuff going on. It remains to be seen what will happen with Punk, the Young Bucks and Omega, but we'll continue following the story. Next up is AEW reaching reconciliation with Punk and the Elite. And the 18th October Dynamite contained clues that AEW may be headed for a reconciliation with CM Punk and the Elite. While Punk, the Bucks and Kenny Omega remained suspended, Punk appeared in a hype video for Chris Jericho's Ring of Honor title defense, while AEW's announcers mentioned that the Bucks and Omega's names during the Trios Championship, acknowledging them as the inaugural champions. Now, this is the first time any of the suspended wrestlers have even been mentioned on TV by name, which could mean AEW's investigation into the backstage bedlam is nearing a resolution. Next up, Bret Hart wants Goldberg removed from the WWE Hall of Fame. It looks like Bret the Hitman Hart got blueberries in his oatmeal instead of raisins. How else to explain his latest rant on Bill Goldberg, where the excellence of execution called for the WWE to remove Goldberg from the Hall of Fame. During a Facebook Live appearance, Hart mentioned, "I've always thought that if Goldberg got in the Hall of Fame, then Horowitz should have gone in the Hall of Fame. Horowitz can actually wrestle. Goldberg never could. I didn't think he got there for hurting everybody he worked with. They should take Goldberg out." What do you think? Should Goldberg be removed from the Hall of Fame? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, Shinsuke setting sights on NXT. Is Shinsuke Nakamura setting his sights on NXT? As Nakamura has been absent from SmackDown, and while he's recently took off time to head to Japan for Antonio Inoki's funeral, fans wondered why the King of Strong style wasn't being used. Fans who tuned into the 18th October NXT saw Nakamura defeat Channing Stacks Lorenzo, and it's unknown whether Nakamura's appearance was a one and done or the return of a run on the black and gold brand. Next up, Austin Theory's unlikely cash-in. Speaking of main roster stars heading to NXT, is Mr. Money in the Bank Austin Theory contemplating a cash-in on the NXT Championship? Fans tuning into last night's NXT had to wonder after Theory showed up at the end of the show during the confrontation between NXT champion Bron Breakker and his two challengers at this week's Halloween Havoc event. And finally, Jim Ross reflecting on retirement. Last but not least, WWE Hall of Famer Jim Ross is 70 years old, and while he's still considered an asset to the AEW broadcast booth, recent remarks suggest he may see his career winding down. This is what he had to say on his recent episode of his podcast, Grillin' JR. "I think my contract with AEW is about another year and change. I'm looking at finishing out and then taking it from there, so that means I'm thinking about retirement." Ross is often ranked as the greatest wrestling announcer of all time, and while some critics say good old JR isn't as good as he used to be, there's no denying that he still contributes positively to any AEW show he works. Ross added, "I haven't talked to Tony Khan about this, but when I signed an extension, I think for 18 months or something like that, and it's still in effect, I'm happy with that arrangement. We'll take it one week at a time. I don't know if I'm going to stay or if he wants me to stay. I think he does, and I know I do. But I also have to be realistic. I'm not a young kid. Maybe I'm traveling too much. Maybe I don't need to come to Dynamite and stay at home an extra day before you get on that next airplane. I like what I'm doing, I really do." What do you think of JR retiring? Let us know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.